stage, Lady Winifred Morris.
God bless you so much, and thank you so much for this opportunity. And I am mindful of the time, but I am grateful for this opportunity to speak about coming out of the box and having innovative ideas that will propel all of us farther, higher, closer to God, and making our ministries reflect the gifts that God has put in us. I want to thank first Mother Barbara McCoo-Lewis, because you have made space for your daughter, and I am grateful. And you, my dear First Lady, Lady May, I just honor you as a superb woman, as an excellent example, and as we all grow up, we hope we're going to grow up like you. You're fabulous. Will you help me celebrate our two dynamic leaders? I know the time is well spent, but the concept is so important that I wanted to share just my little exegesis on the matter. Years and years and years ago, because I was still in school, and I'm way over that now, and I opened a Time magazine, and I saw this magnificent mahogany carved desk. It had, you could tell it was an executive, very wealthy executive's desk, but it had no phone, no calendar, no notepad, no blotter, not a pencil, not a container of a pencil, but it was an executive desk, and it was empty. But there was beside it, or behind it, a huge leather chair with tooled leather working in it, and then the base was carved wood, and there was a guy in the chair, leaning back with his hands behind his head and his feet on that executive desk. I said, what could this be about? Because that desk is too nice for him to put his feet on. The caption under it said, "This man is working. Exxon." That's all it said, and it burned across my comprehension that he was doing nothing by the world's standard, but he was being paid an executive's job salary and benefits to just sit back, put his feet on the desk, doesn't even have to call the secretary. When he's ready, he'll let them know what processed in his mind, because his whole purpose was to think outside of the box. And Exxon said, I'll pay you and make it a good salary for you to do nothing but think outside of the box. I cannot tell you how that impacted me. I even tried to find it, but I'm 76 now, and I was 21 in school, so I didn't know if the archive went back that far. So I'm telling you what it was. And that is what the corporate world remembers and understands, but that we in the church don't necessarily believe that if it isn't labor intensive, maybe we're not really working effectively. So we want to put our minds to work. We want to put the gifts that God gave us to work, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to come home sweaty every Sunday from church to be effective. You've got to find a better way that is effective, that saves you, because we need those gifts to keep giving to us. And most of us have worn our lives out working hard, but not necessarily working smart. So I wanted to talk about just definitions. The outline is in your book, and it will be a little more extensive than what I will share, because the time is Mother's time this evening. So leadership is not power. Nobody told is he 54? Nobody told him that leadership is not power. Leadership is not manipulation. It is not dictatorial. It is not a clique. I'm gonna pause right there, and everybody fill in the blank of what that word clique means to you in the church context. Leadership is not coercion. It is not intimidation. It is not domination. Leadership is not a cash cow. Got me? So we don't aspire for promotion in church because it brings offerings and hand claps and 47th Psalm and a higher seat it's not a cash cow. It's a bigger opportunity to serve. So leadership is not a payoff to your friends. Leadership is not authoritative. It has authority, but it isn't authoritative. There's a difference. I can have authority over you and only speak with a smile and a tender voice and nice words and hugs and all of that, because we do that with our children. We're authoritative with them, but we have authority with them, but they're not authoritative. So leadership is not hereditary. Leadership is not management. Leadership is not bribery. Now, we do want to receive people and bless people, but we can't have leaders who have an expectation of reward, because then that flies in the face of why God called us to begin with. He said, you just go into the vineyard and work, and I'll observe and I'll pay what's right. So you can't hold your church hostage to give you what you think you're worth. God, you're supposed to work as unto the Lord. So I wanted to talk about what leadership is and what leadership is not. So we said, I gave you what it is not. Now let's look at what it is. Leadership is motivation. I don't have to con you, offer to pay you, give you a high seat and a fancy title to get you to work in the church. Your inspiration because you believe the vision that the leader has put forth, and that in itself makes you want to be a part of it. Leadership is influence. You can't make people do. We're learning very, very quickly that our millennials don't obey. Leadership is influence, but if you get them close to you and they feel that you love them and that you're interested in them on their kinds of activities, then you can get them to work untiringly in the church. Leadership is inspiration. Inspiration. Do you know when we talk about respiration, you can inspire is taking in life-giving oxygen and expiring is giving it off. So they're saying you can live by what leadership can do when it is inspiring to the congregation. Effective leadership cannot be awarded, it cannot be assigned, it can't even be appointed, because authentic leadership is a spiritual gift, and that requires spiritual sacrifices to make it fully operational, to make it functional, to make it beneficial to the congregation and to the leader it's serving. It means you've got to wrap some fasting and prayer up with your committee meetings. You've got to have some goals that you set as prayer goals for the entire committee to come together. You have to study the word. You have to be able to reinforce and encourage your committee members, because they're going to be more easily discouraged than you, because God planted the vision in your mind. So you're going to hang on and work for it forever. But you've got to come along and get the ones that are falling by the wayside. You don't tell them, well, we don't need you anymore because you missed 3 meetings, but you never tried to find out why I didn't come to the meeting. You don't know what the other sister said in the ladies' room that made me go home and stay home, because she knew I was on the road up, and she told what she wanted to make that girl get discouraged. You have to have wisdom to lead people. Leadership is enthusiasm. It motivates people to catch on to your vision and follow it up with service. Leadership is assurance. That means if I'm a good leader, I didn't make up because I had fish the night before and had a dream. That's not what we're working on. I heard straight from God when he said, do this. And when you're convinced that God gave the orders, then you don't get weary, you don't get questioning, you just keep on girding up your loins until you can get the congregation to be motivated to go with you. Leadership is relational. People have confidence in the leader, and then they join and follow that leader. Leadership is respectful. It's not mean-spirited. It's not belittling. You don't insult the people from the pulpit and expect them to continue to come and be embarrassed in a church that they love. So leadership is authentic when we share responsibilities with the team. It all can't rest in the head and the divine head of us. We've got to trust them enough, to give them enough, to be able to work to help us bring the vision to life. Leadership that is authentic. It benefits the entire organization. You don't just work for your team. You're working among the congregation, and then your piece links up to that piece, that links up to that piece, that links up to that piece, and when you look around, the whole church has morphed onto a whole nother level because there was cooperation among all the pieces, and then the puzzle came together. That's where the vision of the pastor comes in. That's where the one who has an overall vision of what he wants to accomplish or what God has mandated for him to accomplish in the congregation. So leadership that is authentic, it clones itself so that other parts of the organization don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can continue in the same areas, but particular to their particular discipline. So if it's music, then they take care of that. If it's youth, then they can put it in that context. If it's Sunday school, you can put it in that context. So, but the same skills work in any venue. So prayer has set the agenda, and the actual work of the leadership team is to step out on that confidence that we serve a really big God, and he's more than able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we could ask or think, but it's always according to the power that's working in us. So if it's mischief power, then you're actually tearing down the church. If it is gossip power, then you are destroying someone's soul. Oh God, absolutely, because it's whatever is working, then it's amped up by being disseminated through the church. You want to disseminate servitude, dedication, professionalism, sacrifice, giving, being the best that you can be. And finally, the key to working outside of the box, I believe, it depends on the skill, the insight, and the vision that is projected, and the goals that are to be reached by the team before the leader must keep out of the box in mind as she puts together her team. So here's some things that occurred to me that you don't want to do as you build your team. Don't choose your friends. Don't choose your friends. If you're going to lead them, there are going to be times when you're going to need to discipline them. You're going to have to tell them, shape up a little on this side. So you can't have your best buddy and your girlfriend and try to discipline her and then go out and have coffee. Don't choose your clones or the people who are your hero worshipers, because you'll never get the truth from them when you're saying, how's it working? Oh, it's just wonderful, First Lady. It's just wonderful. Everything you do is just wonderful, and we all love you. And you say, well, what is that in my back that I feel right up under my shoulder blade? actually choose someone who questions why and how things have always been done in a particular way. They're not there to mess up your life. They're there to keep you focused. You need to hear the critic to be able to say, hey, there's a little bit of truth in there. I better check on that. I better work on that. I better eliminate that. But you'll never know it if everybody's patting you on the back and giving you accolades when it isn't really actual in fact. Select people who are good at something. This is important, I think, even if it appears not to be a part of the current project. Excellence and skills have adaptability. So even though you're talking about whatever your particular program is, if the person has a skill at teaching, that isn't what you were putting together the team for. But if she's apt to teach, then maybe there's a point in this project where they need to come before the pastor and before the congregation to get their support, and they need to have someone who can give a convincing presentation. That's why you want someone of excellence, even if the skill doesn't match the exact program you're working on. There's always a space for skill. There's always a space for talent. You can always find a way to incorporate a loyal and capable person into your program. So the leader must fully be aware, and I'm almost through, that power comes from prayer, hard work, diligence, faithfulness of effort, continuing through apparent disappointments, trusting the continuing process and the faithful promise of God. Add to that process sacrificial prayer and fasting for the outpour and the outcome. And God will let you see an out-of-the-box bonanza, and I believe God. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm glad there are a couple of guys left. I have sons, grandsons, a husband, and every male in my family is a sports fanatic. The Eagles but they bleed green. And so 2 years ago, we got to the Super Bowl game. And it was the first time that we had a chance looking like, but then we had the Patriots, and we knew we weren't going to beat the Patriots. So the coach's job, the leader of the committee, is supposed to send the plays in for the quarterback to execute. From the coach to the quarterback to the execute. We were in the end of the game. We were behind. And so the quarterback called a timeout. And he goes shuffling to the side. And now they know that people read lips, so they have their conversation behind the little play sheet. And I saw his eyes when he frowned when the quarterback offered him the play. And the quarterback went back again and said what he said. And then you saw him say, well, and you knew he wasn't in favor of that particular play. So they get on the line. Nick Foles lines up behind the center. He has a receiver. So it's the standard setup because the quarterback can hand it off to the running back, and he's gone with it. So that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to set that picture in their mind. And so he snapped the ball. He handed it off to the running back, and then he scampered into the end zone. Nobody was watching him because he didn't have the ball anymore. And out of nowhere, the halfback fades out, doesn't run for the end zone. Boom! He passes it off to Foles. Nobody was even looking at him. He caught it in a walk and we won. We beat the Patriots, but here's it didn't come from the coach. It didn't come from the head of the committee. It wasn't the play that the coach called. It was the man in the trenches. It was the quarterback whose suit was all muddied up because he'd been rolled on that turf more than once that afternoon. But he said, I just got a feeling I need for you to try the Philly Special. That's the name of the play. It's named after a cheesesteak hoagie in Philadelphia.